Hey, and welcome back. So, we are going to we're going to jump into the AFC South preview now. Uh, there might be something else that comes back up. If that happens, well, we'll figure it out. So, going back over to our lads. We're on the AFC South. We're going to start with the Texans and with the Titans. So, for my Texan fan friends out there, and man, this mic's sensitive. Y'all might hear some like clanging or whatever. There's some painting and stuff going on on the back patio. So once again, I think this is definitely kind of a two-tiered division. You got the Texans and the Jaguars on the bottom end, and the Titans and Colts are playoff contenders, maybe even Super Bowl contenders. But definitely a bottom two and a top two here. So for the Texans going into the season, for the Texans going into the season, Brandon Cooks, of course, is your number one and an underrated number one option, I might add. Nico Collins going into year two. He should be your starting. He'll be playing your X position. He's going to be on the line of scrimmage. They're going to play Cooks off the line of scrimmage and slot a bit. Chris Moore is going to be kind of your more traditional slot. They picked him up from Baltimore. He formerly of Cincinnati. I really liked him coming out of the draft, or his like draft class. I'm trying to remember how many years ago that was now. I thought he could be a solid slot option kind of role playing receiver. And he's going to get a shot to prove it this year. They've also got Chris Conley back again. Solid role playing outside receiver. He blocks pretty well as well. Connor Wellington, who they picked up off waivers from the Niners. They also have Philip Dorsett back for a second year. He gives you, speed, and that's about it. They also have Jalen Camp back for a second year, and they have undrafted free agents Drew Estrada and Johnny Johnson III as well. Outside of Cooks and Collins, and even with Collins, he's still like year two, he's got to prove it. The rest of their receiver room, I mean, Chris Conley's going to make it through the year, most likely. Sorry, may have inhaled a little bit of paint fumes. I mean, it's not the most exciting group, but Cooks is going to get, especially, and if he's healthy the whole year, you can expect 1,000 yards or more from Cooks. And you can expect him to solidly anchor your wide receiver group. And I think he's going to be fine, or a good. I think he's a good get in fantasy this year for sure. Because, I mean, he's really the only this guy we know we can count on in the passing game. Now, offensive line's a little brighter. You got Laramie Tunsil. They brought in AJ Cann, who's a fine starter. Justin Britt is back for another year. He's started a lot in his career. Kenyon Green, now he missed a little bit of time because of an injury. Like, he got a concussion early in camp. He hadn't played a ton with the starters. If he doesn't start week one, he'll start week two. But I think Kenyon Green will probably end up in the starting lineup. Well, as Lovey said, sooner rather than later. He'll be in the starting lineup early in the season. You also have Titus Howard listed at right tackle. I still believe in Titus Howard. I thought he was going to be a multi-year project anyway. I was kind of surprised he ended up in the first round. But I did like him as a day two pick. I did have him outside of my top 50 in 2019, but that was just because I thought he was a project. That didn't mean that he couldn't become a great NFL player. We'll see. Behind them, they like Charlie Heck, and he started a bit last year. He's their swing tackle right now. Do not be shocked if Heck also starts some games at right tackle this year. Um, and then they also drafted Austin Deculus out of LSU in the 6th round. I like his potential as a right tackle. He could factor in somewhere down the line. He could even get moved inside to guard in the future as well. But he was a solid developmental pick in the 3rd round. Justin McCray, Jimmy Morrissey, and 2019 second round pick Max Sharping backing up along the interior offensive line. And then behind them, you've got, kind of fringe guys like Jordan Steckler, Scott Kessenberry, and Trevor Wallace-Sims. And they also, I forgot, they brought in Cedric Obuihi. He could make the roster, but I feel like they'll probably run with just the 4 tackles. These guys, I don't think they're going to carry 11 offensive linemen. I wouldn't guess that they would carry 11 offensive linemen. I think they're going to run 10. And I think it's these guys you see in the first 2 rows here. Moving on to tight end, they brought back Pharaoh Brown. They had Brevin Jordan, who was a 5th round pick last year, who was underdrafted last year. Should have gone way before the 5th round. Jordan's going to be important for their passing game. They also drafted Tegan Quintoriano in the 5th round. I thought that was a little bit of an overdraft, but, because I just didn't see anything special about him in a really deep tight end class. But he's not like a bad player. He's got some developing to do, but I don't see. It's weird to say, like, what's the difference between the 5th and 6th round? I think there's a big difference. Like, 6th, 7th round, you start seeing, like, all kind of wacky, small school selections and people that maybe you didn't scout. But there were a number of tight ends who were still on the board in the 5th round who were better than Quintoriano, in my opinion. And he wasn't the best tight end on his own team last year. They also have Anthony Auclair at the tight end position, Mason Schreck, and undrafted free agent Seth Green. Speaking of which, Seth Green goes undrafted. He and Quintoriano, basically same grade in my book. Looking at quarterback. Sorry, almost skipped quarterback. Davis Mills, 3rd round pick last year. He's going the year as a starter. They brought in Kyle Allen as a veteran backup. They also have Jeff Driscoll. So a lot of athleticism behind Mills at the quarterback position, or at least movement ability, especially Driscoll. Allen has had some lower body injuries, but there's a lot of physical talent behind Mills there. But Mills looked really good at the end of last season. I'm excited that he's getting like the full year shot. Running back Dameon Pierce, I was really mad last night in my fantasy draft that someone took him like literally 3 picks before I was going to draft him. And I should have just gone ahead and drafted him earlier, but I'm like, oh no, I'm playing this one. I've got this one. Nope. So Pierce, they've got him listed as a starter. He's going to start. Or he's going to get the most carries this year. He is the fantasy back here. And I think he's going to finish second in fantasy among rookie running backs. I think he's going to be ahead of Kenneth Walker and some other guys. It's definitely between him and Breece Hall. But I think Breece Hall is probably going to end up... I think Breece Hall is going to end up the number 1 guy out of rookie running backs. But Dameon Pierce is my bet for number 2. Behind him, you've got Marlon Mack. Let's see if he's healthy and what he is after dealing with a number of injuries the last few years. I liked Mack over in Indianapolis. I thought he was a more than solid starter. Probably a little undervalued. He may not be that now. They've got Rex Burkhead also, who will play. He'll do some stuff probably on special teams units, play on 3rd downs. They've got DeRay Ogunbowale that they brought in as well. And Royce Freeman is here. I don't know how many running backs they're going to keep, but I'll guarantee that Burkhead, Mack, and Pierce are making it. We know they're going to be there. So you've got Paul Kessenberry, another one of the Kessenberry brothers. He's their starting fullback. They did pick up Troy Hairston as an undrafted free agent. I have a feeling Hairston will just end up on the practice squad, from what I'm hearing. Moving to defense. So Jonathan Grenard really looked good closing out last year. They believe they have one starting edge for the future, for sure. On the other edge, you've got Agbania Okoronkwo, who is the brother of Chig Okoronkwo, who just got drafted by the Titans at tight end. He's manning the other end spot right now, or at least that's how they have it slated. They also have veterans Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison behind them, who they brought in, both of those guys in from Buffalo. These guys are experienced veterans. I'm not sure how much they have left in the tank, but you should at least get competent rotational play from them. And Jerry Hughes comes back to the great state of Texas, where he played his college ball at TCU. And then they also brought in Rasheem Green from Seattle, former second-round pick. Has some upside still. And they have Damone Harris, Derek Rivers, who originally are drafted by the Patriots out of Houston. And he was with he was with Vegas last year. I thought he had a lot of potential coming out of the draft. They also have an undrafted free agent in Adedeo Odelaye. Which all these guys can't make the roster. I mean, maybe they could, but they're not. I'm gonna guess they're gonna keep 6 edge guys, and that battle is gonna be between Harris and Rivers and Odelaye. I think Green's probably locked in. All those top 4 guys are. Moving to the interior line, they really like Roy Lopez as a run stuffer. Drafted in the 6th round last year. Malik Collins is a solid starter. They picked up last year, who gives you some pass rush juice. I'm a huge fan of Thomas Booker, who they drafted in the 5th round. I think he's got tons of upside. Should have gone well before the 5th round. Too smart, too athletic. They've got 2020 second-round pick Ross Blacklock, who, if he could just get out of his own way, he's got immense physical talent. And then they also have undrafted free agent Kurt Hinish and Michael Dwunford. It's an interesting name. I mean, they're still in like a serious rebuild here. Don't get that twisted. At linebacker, Christian Harris right now is labeled as a starter here. Now, I'll say this. There's some stuff in my training camp, some of the stuff I've been studying for training camp news and whatnot. Our lads has some stuff wrong, because like they had Alex Leatherwood listed as a starter when I was doing my preview Wednesday. I read later Wednesday evening that they might just outright cut Alex Leatherwood. They're going to try and trade him, but like they don't even trust him to play guard. Oof. But Christian Harris slated to start at linebacker next to Christian Kirksey, who they've extended, who's played really well for them. They also have Kamu Gruger-Hill, who's a solid rotational linebacker. They have like Neville Hewitt, who they brought in from the Jets. They got Jake Hansen as an undrafted free agent, and and they traded for Blake Cashman, who, if he could stay healthy, is a solid linebacker. Like, really high end rotational guy. So, I would imagine, or I could imagine all these guys making the roster. And actually, at this point, it probably would be between Cashman and Hansen over if they cut one of them. Or maybe they just leave Hansen on the practice squad, something like that. Anyway, linebacker, not terrible, but they're going to be asking a lot of Christian Harris, but mostly on passing downs. I don't know if they trust him yet in the run game. But that's why you've got Gruger-Hill, Hewitt, Cashman, Kirksey. But Harris on passing downs, his coverage ability is, he was a safety coming out of high school. Well, and actually, I think he played some corner too in high school. He was a defensive back in high school and got moved to linebacker, which is why his coverage skills, his movement skills are so awesome. Moving to, actually, they've got 3 linebacker positions. I'm so used to everything being nickel and 5 DBs, which they do have that. I'm just not used to seeing 3 linebacker spots. So actually, they have way more than 6 linebackers. So let's look at this again. So Harris, Kirksey, and Garrett Wallow, who they drafted in the 5th round last year, listed as starters. And you got Gruger-Hill, Hewitt, Kevin Pierre-Louis. Now, Kevin Pierre-Louis, another really good player, and actually kind of shocked he's not listed as a starter for Wallow. I think that says more about Wallow than anything. And they also, I forgot, they brought in Jalen Reese-Maben. And I don't believe that he's a 3rd-string linebacker on this team at all. Jalen Reeves-Maben was was basically a starter for the Lions before coming over to Houston. But maybe this is my Tennessee bias, but Reeves-Maben's a solid linebacker. Maybe not a high-end starter, but he's a great rotational linebacker. That's interesting. Moving to defensive back, Stingley has had some real big flash plays. They really believe in Derek Stingley. He's been really good. He's going to be starting across from Steven Nelson, who they were able to get on the cheap after Pittsburgh had to kind of let him walk for cap reasons. I really like their starting corner tandem. They've currently got Tavier Thomas listed as their slot corner. He's battling with Kendall Sheffield, who came over on waivers from Atlanta. Well, and also I would imagine that safety Terrence Brooks might get some looks in the slot too at times. And starting safety Jalen Peter is going to. I can't decide. I've heard people say his name 3 different ways. But Jalen Peter, he's going to get time in the slot as well. And Eric Murray's also starting at safety. That's fine, but he's probably, out of players listed as starters at safety, he might be the worst. And if he's not, he's close to it. They've got Desmond King listed as an outside guy here. King's probably going to factor in more, in my opinion, I would think, at safety in the slot. If Desmond King's having to play outside corner for them on the regular, that's not good. They have Tremon Smith also listed at outside corner. Undrafted free agent Jacoby Francis. Isaac Isaac Yaden. Another guy whose last name has confused me for a long time. You really need to hope that Stingley and Nelson play most of the outside snaps this year, because there is no depth at all. Behind Murray and Peter, I mentioned Terrence Brooks, also Jonathan Owens, Graylin Arnold, MJ Stewart. MJ Stewart will factor in at slot as well, I would imagine. And undrafted free agent Tristan McCollum. If McCollum doesn't make the initial roster, he will end up on their practice squad, and he will eventually make the team later, I think. He is the younger brother, or maybe not younger, he's the brother of Zion McCollum, who was one of my top corner prospects this year, who ended up going to Seattle in the 5th, or no, Tampa Bay in the 5th round, somehow. So they played together at Sam Houston State, and Tristan is also really good and really athletic. He has the tools and the talent to develop into a really good starting NFL safety if he gets the opportunity. And I would rather put him on the roster early on and give him reps on a rebuilding team that's not, slated to do anything, over the top of guys like Graylin Arnold or Jonathan Owens, personally. Because he has way higher ceiling than basically every other player they've got at safety, except maybe Jalen Peter. But there are things he can do that, or there are things that he could develop into being able to do that Peter wouldn't even be able to match because of his size and athleticism advantages. Anyway, moving to their specialist. They've got Cameron Johnston at punter. They're paying Kaimi Fairbairn a lot of money for a kicker, but he's been really good for them. They did bring in Matt Amendola just to kind of get a look at another kicker, but they like Fairbairn. And they still have John Weeks at long snapper. He's one of the longest tenured players in the league with the team he started with after making the team as an undrafted free agent in 2010. And their returners, Desmond King is your punt returner. Might be the least exciting punt return listing in the league. And then you've got Trayman Smith as kick returner. He's the backup punt returner. Connor Weddington also listed here. This team really lacks explosiveness. Like, outside of Brandon Cooks and Derek Stingley, there's really no one with, like, speed or wiggle on this team. Or speed and wiggle on this team. That's kind of depressing. They have John Mechie. He's listed on the non-football injury list. What that really means is he's listed on the wasn't injured in the NFL. I imagine Mechie will make it back at some point this season, kind of like Jameson Williams in Detroit. And I think he'll have a profound effect on the receiving group in the future. Really like Mechie. Darius Anderson also on injured reserve, as is Chester Rogers, which Rogers, once again though, even if he was your punt return, he's not very fast. He's not that agile. I don't understand how he keeps getting jobs around the league as a return man. So that's the Texans. I think the Texans are safely at the bottom of the division, and they're going to be picking really close to the top of the draft. And Mills is going to have to do some like real heavy lifting this year if he hopes to continue as the starter, because this QB class has a lot of talent and upside in it at the top of the draft. So, close. Thank you. But my guess for the Texans is, well, and they're going to focus on a lot of young players and developing players. And I really, really love their draft class. But they're going to be at the bottom of the league this year. Somewhat by design. What they need to do is they need to keep clearing out cap space and focusing on players who have really high ceilings. They need to be taking like home run swings. They need to give obscure players chances. Like, that's what this year needs to be about. And trying to and if they can, get value for certain veterans outside of like Laramie Tunsil. Because they need to keep him. Moving on to the Colts. I mean, a lot of people really think the Colts are going to be amazing this year. They could be. But they've continuously underachieved recently, according to other people's preseason standards. But they've got a number one receiver in Michael Pittman Jr. They have a guy in Alec Pierce who has been really good in training camp, looked like a veteran, and he's got an incredible skill set, incredible athleticism and tools. Paris Campbell is allegedly healthy, and at the beginning of last year, he looked like he was about to have a massive breakout, and then it ended basically immediately. Beyond them, they like 6th-round pick from 2020 Desmond Patman. Ashton Dulin keeps hanging around this roster. They brought in Kiki Kuti last year after the Texans let him go. I think he's a solid backup slot option to Paris Campbell. They have one of last year's like small school athletic freaks, Mike Strachan, who they drafted in the 7th round. I still believe that guy could turn into a really fun, like, role-playing, deep threat, contested catch monster as he develops. Because, I mean, he was from I think it was College of Charleston or Charleston Southern. It's one of the two. Like, really small school. But I think he could become something fun. Because he literally came in the league as just a ball of clay. Really, really high-quality clay. Behind him, you've got Ethan Fernea, who's an undrafted free agent. Samson Nakua as an undrafted free agent. He's going to hang around in the practice squad, I imagine. And DeMichael Harris, who was an undrafted free agent in 2020. Nakua played at BYU, 6'3", 206. He's not like some... I mean, he's interesting, is the way I would put it. He's interesting. Moving on to offensive line. Matt Pryor is currently slated to start at left tackle. They did draft Bernard Ryman in the 3rd round, but Ryman needs some more polishing. And remember, the Colts didn't have a 1st-round pick this year because of the Carson Wentz trade where they acquired him from Philadelphia. And then they made another move that got them Matt Pryor last year. They like Pryor. Now, they like Ryman, but they like Pryor as their starter going in the year. They were talking about that back in the spring. Alongside him, you've got Quentin Nelson, arguably the best interior offensive lineman in the league. Ryan Kelly, really good center when he's healthy. They like Danny Pinter, one of the reasons they were totally fine with letting Mark Lewinsky walk. They believe they've developed a starter in him, former 5th-round pick, going into his 3rd season in the league. Braden Smith, who they drafted in the 2nd round 2018, has been a really consistently good right tackle. And they've brought in Dennis Kelly to back him up. So I actually kind of like their depth at tackle. They also got Ryan Van Denmark as an undrafted free agent. I think he could make the roster. They also have Jordan Murray backing up at the other tackle spot. On the interior, you've got Will Freeze, who was a 7th-round pick last year. Wesley French, who went undrafted. And Josh Salzner. Both these guys are undrafted guys who have made the roster. They pretty much have their offensive line set. And they trust their ability to develop these interior guys as backups. So, and I think their offensive line is going to be fine. I actually think Matt Pryor is going to be fine at left tackle. He's not. I don't know if he'll be top 20 among left tackles, but he's not going to be abysmally bad. Like, maybe he'll end up top 20, but I don't think he's going to be abysmally bad. Because he's better than some options teams have starting at left tackle. And he's definitely better than what a lot of teams have starting at right tackle. Tight end, Mo Alley-Cox is now the starter here. They like Kylan Granson, who they drafted in the 4th round last year. Granson's good. I think he's not big. He's 6'2", 242. He's kind of a move tight end. They drafted out of SMU. But I actually think in their multi-tight end sets, he's going to get a lot. I actually think he's going to get a lot of touches, and he'll probably even line up at fullback some because they don't have a listed fullback. That's because he's going to get a bunch of those snaps. They also have Michael Jacobson, who I think they're going to carry at least 4 tight ends because they like to run 3 tight end sets. They drafted Jelani Woods in the 3rd round. Jelani Woods is, if you call back the spring, love him at tight end. And he projects as a more athletic, more physical Mo Alley-Cox. Cox is 6'7", Woods is 6'7", and he's thicker built, stronger built. He's twitchier. Not necessarily the quickest get off, but he's got really great long speed. And when he gets moving, it takes 3 guys to take him down. It's incredible, some of his highlights from college. I mean, highlights aren't everything, but I mean, his tape's really good. But like I said, Michael Jacobson and then Nikola Kalanick, who they brought in this year. I think Jacobson makes the roster. I think they're going to run 4 tight ends on the roster. They could run 5, but I feel like they only pick someone up if someone gets hurt. Moving to quarterback, they brought in Matt Ryan. They have upgraded at quarterback, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, from Wentz, from a floor level. Maybe you would say at this point Wentz has a higher ceiling, but I think Ryan's going to fit right into this offense. They brought in Nick Foles as well to be his backup. So he's reunited with Frank Reich, who was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles at quarterback. Sam Ehlinger, who they drafted in the 6th round last year, is listed as the 3rd stringer, and they also brought in Jack Cohn as an undrafted free agent. it'll be interesting to see how many quarterbacks they carry on their roster. But if there's a battle, it's between Cone and Ellinger. So yeah, running back. I don't know if there's any team in the league more excited about their running back position than the Colts this year. Jonathan Taylor going to year 3 has been better than advertised, which is not a shock. They've got Naheem Hines, who might be the best third down specialist running back in the league. I would say so. They also brought in Philip Lindsay, who has explosive speed and has been kind of underrated during his career. He's not a stud running back, but if he's your third running back, your running back room's good, or should be. If he's clearly the third back. And then behind them, they have Deion Jackson, who was a undrafted free agent last year, Tyson Williams, who they brought in from Baltimore, and undrafted free agent Devontae Price, who I can't believe didn't get drafted at a FIU. Guy is really stinking good. And they had a bunch of other running backs that they picked up as undrafted, because Max Borghi was there. I also think, if I remember correctly, CJ Verdell was one of the guys they picked up. But if so, he's gone. But sorry. Like I said, the fact that Price is listed 6th here, which Tyson Williams, Baltimore liked him last year. I think he got injured because they had a bunch of running back injuries. Kind of shocked that neither of those guys are ahead of Deion Jackson on our lad's depth chart, but this is not an end-all be-all. These are just who's on the roster as a current. I really like Price. Really like Price. So, moving to defense, and like I said, these position groups all look really good. There are a lot of people who poo-poo Mo Alley Cox as a starting tight end. He's trash. Someone on Twitter talking about how he's trash. It's no, he's fine. He's solid. He's not exceptional, but he's solid and has been productive in the role he's been given. He's doing what they want him to do. So, anyway, defensive speaking, Kwity Paye going into year 2, they're expecting there's a lot of people expecting a breakout from Paye in year 2. We'll see. They love Grover Stewart. They've kept him around. 2017 4th round pick at nose tackle. You've got DeForest Buckner manning the 3 technique spot. He is, behind Aaron Donald, arguably the best player at that position in the game. And then they brought in Yannick Ngakoue in a trade with the Raiders and upgraded their other edge spot. And they've got some really fun players here. I like Tyquan Lewis in a rotational role. Dayo Odeyingbo, who they drafted in the 2nd round last year, has a lot of potential. Twitchy guy. They have Afidi Odenigbo, who they brought in from Cleveland. Ben Banogu's still here, who's a 2nd round pick in 2019, who's kind of disappointed. And Cameron Klein, who's kind of been on the fringes of the roster practice squad since they picked him up as an undrafted free agent in 2020. Backups along the interior. Eric Johnson, they drafted in the 5th round. Small school guy. A lot of upside. They also have R.J. McIntosh here, who I believe was on the Texans before this. 2020 undrafted free agent Chris Williams, who they've continued to keep around. 6th round pick Curtis Brooks, And they brought in Byron Cowart from New England. Brooks, isn't he from Cincinnati? Yes, Cincinnati. Not the biggest interior guy. I mean, he's 6'2". They got it was 287. He's probably up over 290 by this point. But you got a guy at 6'2", 290. He's not huge. But he was somewhat. I mean, he was fairly disruptive at Cincinnati. He was their he was their best interior guy on a really good defense. The last few years. And I'll say this, Ballard's done a really good job of scouting and hitting picks on day 3 and finding interesting undrafted guys. So I would definitely keep an eye on Johnson and Brooks on the interior. But their interior line, outside of Buckner, they've definitely been playing on the cheap, which makes sense. They've invested a ton into the edge. I mean, you're looking here since 2018. Well, last year they doubled up on edge guys in the first, second rounds. And then 2018, second round pick Tyquan Lewis. 2019, second round pick Ben Benoga. Lewis, of course, on a second contract because last year was the last year on his rookie deal. And then they traded for Yannick Ngakoue. They traded Brock Ya-Sin, who was a former second-round pick, right? I don't think he was a first-round pick. So they traded for Yannick Ngakoue. So their defensive front is something to, I mean, I'd say, be really optimistic about. Linebacker, really, really like their linebackers. Which currently, I didn't realize that. So Leonard is going by Shaquille Leonard instead of Darius Leonard now. So that's why I've been hearing people call him like Shaq Leonard. That's interesting. So he's currently on the PUP list, but he should be good to start the season. Leonard, some people think he's the best off-ball linebacker in the league. He's definitely top 5. Probably even top 3. Bobby Okereke, they drafted in 3rd round 2019. He's been more than solid. So those are their top 2 guys. They also have E.J. Speed, who was a 5th round pick in 2019. Zaire Franklin, 7th round pick in 2018. They like to attack this position on day 3. Franklin and Speed have been the second string guys for several years now. But their contracts, well, Franklin, I think they re-up. Speed's coming into his deal. That's why they really attack this position in undrafted free agency. They also brought in Brandon King. He's not going to make it. But they've got JoJo Doman, Forrest Rhine, James Skalski, and Sterling Weatherford battling it out for roster spots. I'm a huge fan of the way they've attacked undrafted free agency this year. Got a bunch of good guys. Doman probably should have been drafted. I get why Skalski didn't make it and didn't get drafted, but I'd imagine, and not just because of name recognition for Skalski. I think Skalski, I think I'd take Skalski over Ryan and Weatherford. And I know Doman, I'd take him over all of them for the linebacker spots. That being said, moving to the secondary, they brought in Brandon Faison from Las Vegas to start at one corner, which is kind of scary to me. He's been a really good special teams guy. I don't know if I'm excited about him starting at corner. Stephen Gilmore should lock down one of those starting spots. You've got Kenny Moore, who's arguably the best slot corner in the league. You're they know they're set at those 2 spots. Behind that, though, it's a little more interesting. They brought in Tony Brown. He's listed their backup slot corner, former Alabama guy, really athletic, but was kind of considered an underachiever at Alabama. He and Anthony Averett were outplayed by Levi Wallace, who went undrafted after starting at Alabama, after walking onto the team. Once again, Levi Wallace, undefeated. But Brown's the backup there. I believe that's the same Tony Brown. Yep, I'm right. I didn't even need to check. I mean, he was a highly recruited guy in college and just never. He just didn't really. I mean, he never really turned into what he was supposed to. Marvell Tell, also, and Isaiah Rogers are your backup outside corners right now. Tell was played mostly safety at USC. He's tall, long. He's a press corner. Isaiah Rogers, 6th round pick in 2020. They've also got Anthony Chesley, Chris Wilcox, and they brought in Dallas Flowers as an undrafted free agent. Corner's the big question mark for this team. Outside of like Gilmore and Kenny Moore, like corner depth, big concern. On the back end, 2020 third round pick Julian Blackman and this year's third round pick Nick Cross are listed as starters. They've also got Rodney McLeod, who they brought in from Philly, who's a old head veteran safety. I'd actually would think McLeod would probably be the starter, but I think Cross is definitely going to get a lot of snaps. Really athletic. There were a couple guys who got drafted ahead of him that really shocked me. They also have 7th round pick Rodney Thomas II, Armani Watts, Will Redmond, and undrafted free agents Trevor Denbo and Marcel Dabo. Actually, Dabo was a street free agent. Anyway, actually, the stuff I've heard about their secondary, they're really high on Thomas's future with the team. So that's, I mean, when you can have a 7th round pick that, like, I think we've got someone who can be a rotational guy quickly. That's good to know. Moving to, and I liked Blackman coming out. Blackman's got to stay healthy because I believe he's missed a lot of time. I believe he missed like a whole season almost with an ACL tear, didn't he? Or am I confusing him with another guy? Yeah, former Utah safety. Sorry, I'm looking in here to see. That's just a scouting profile. Okay. Anyway, moving to the Colts special teams, you've got Matt Hack as their starting punter. He's been in the league for years. They just brought him in. And then Rodrigo Blankenship, who they got in draft in 2020, still the starting kicker. Still have Luke Rhodes at long snapper. They should be fine. They should be fine in the kicking game. Return-wise, Isaiah Rogers listed as their starting kick returner. Naheem Hines starting punt returner. Kuti backing up at punt returner. Dolan backing up at kick return. Andrew Ogletree, who should have figured in at tight end as well. Injured reserve. Carter O'Donnell, injured reserve. And the reason they had to bring in Hack was because Rigoberto Sanchez is also on injured reserve. So, like I said, the Colts are going to contend for the playoffs, but I think they're just going to have to prove it to me. They keep burning people who think they're going to be the breakout. They're going to win the AFC South. They keep saying it, and the Titans keep winning. They keep dominating the Colts in the regular season. I'll believe it when I see it. They're number 2 in the division for me. But they've got a really good roster. They're going to have to prove it before I'm willing to accept it. Moving to the Jaguars. Jaguars did a lot of work on their receiving core, even if they maybe overpaid for a couple of receivers who really shouldn't be, who they shouldn't have necessarily. Like Christian Kirk can be a good number 2. Now, if he plays a lot out of the slot, I feel good about him. I just think he's being overpaid in that regard. Marvin Jones, they're going to try and... They still believe that Jones is a high-end player, but on a reduced snap count. But they still really trust Marvin Jones. Zay Jones had a really nice season last year for Las Vegas and has kind of rebuilt his career, but I still look at him as a, he's a number 3 option. And they're paying him $8 million a year. They also have Laquan Treadwell, Laviska Shenault, who was a second-round pick in 2020, who really should be their starting slot receiver probably. They have Jamal Agnew, who's a special teams guy, like elite-level returner. You've got Jeff Cotton Jr., Tim Jones, who's an undrafted free agent last year, Kevin Austin Jr., who's a really athletic receiver out of Notre Dame, who's an undrafted free agent this year. That archetype of receiver, and probably the reason Kevin Austin went undrafted this year is because you've got guys like Acclamius St. Brown. There's another one. I almost want to say his last name was also Brown. Man, it's kicking me that I can't remember his name. But there have been a couple guys, height, weight, speed, athleticism, explosive vertical testing, broad jump testing, but they just haven't developed into anything. Because it was Acclamius St. Brown was on the Packers. The other one was drafted by the Ravens, and I think he's on the Bears now, or he's somewhere else now. I think maybe it's St. Brown's on the Bears now, but the other guy, man, he was on the Ravens. I think he was in the 2020 draft because he was drafted, I think, after Devin Duvernay. Anyway, those guys haven't hit. I think that hurt Kevin Austin. Austin's got a lot of talent, though. And they also have Willie Johnson, who went undrafted. Be interesting to see if they give Kevin Austin a chance. I think he could be really fun on their roster. He's definitely a high. He's a home run swing. They should have kept DJ Chark around, signed him to the 1-year prove-it deal that Detroit got instead of signing Christian Kirk. That being said, moving the offensive line, they kind of shocked everybody by franchising Cam Robinson and then extending him on a contract that I don't think he's earned. But then again, I remember a lot of us questioned the Bucs' decision with Donovan Smith, and, because he kind of was shaky at first too. But I think Smith was better than Robinson has been. They have Tyler Shatley listed at starting left guard. He's an undrafted free agent they've developed. Luke Fortner that they drafted in the 3rd round has taken over the starting center spot, it seems, which not shocking me in the least. They brought in Brandon Scherf on a big free agent deal. Of course, he's going to start at right guard. And then Jawan Taylor has held onto the starting right tackle spot. So you have 2021 second rounder Walker Little is the swing tackle. I would imagine, I know Will Richardson is listed as the backup left tackle. I think Walker Little's better. And then they also have Badera Traore at tackle. On the interior, you've got fourth round pick Ben Barch from 2020, who is a favorite of mine in that draft as a day 3 prospect. Casey McDermott is listed as the backup center. And Cole Van Lanen is backing up are the backups along the interior with Coy Crunk, Darrell Williams, and undrafted free agent Nick Ford slotting in behind them on the depth chart. I imagine pretty much all of these guys in row 3 here are going to get cut or moved to the practice squad. Tight end, it's like they decided to make a big home run swing bringing in Evan Ingram. If he can stay healthy and, try consistently this year, maybe he can save his career because he has insane, his measurables coming out of the draft were just incredible. Coming out of the combine going into his rookie season were just incredible. And early in his career, he looked like a weapon. And then injuries and his own mindset. But I would argue, those two giant staffs he played under were terrible. So maybe playing with a high-end, talented quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, and a coaching staff that has, a head coach that has a Super Bowl win might help Evan Ingram. Chris Manhertz is still here as kind of more of a blocking style tight end. They have Dan Arnold, last year's 5th round pick Luke Farrell, and Garrett Prince, who they picked up undrafted. Farrell and Manhertz are definitely role-playing, kind of block, maybe catch some passes underneath. Dan Arnold has more receiving juice than that. But, Arizona finally said, we're not going to bring you back. He went to the Carolina Panthers and wasn't incredibly productive before getting traded to the Jaguars, or I believe last year, where once again he wasn't terribly productive either. But he wasn't exactly in great situations in Carolina and Jacksonville last year. Moving to quarterback Trevor Lawrence, he's looked awesome in preseason. I think he's going to take a huge step forward this year. They've got C.J. Beathard as a backup, and they got E.J. Perry undrafted. I believe E.J. Perry is from Brown University, if he's the prospect I'm remembering. Yes. 6'2", 210. He's an interesting, flyer on a potential, pretty good career backup quarterback. Really competitive guy, too. Oh, there we are. Moving to running back. So James Robinson right now is listed as questionable. I actually think, Etienne is probably going to, I think Etienne's going to end up with more snaps and more touches this year because he was drafted in the first round last year, and Etienne has an explosiveness that Robinson doesn't have. But this is still going to be a pretty even backfield, I think. They also drafted Snoop Connor in the 5th round. It's kind of a bigger-bodied running back. They've got Mekhi Sargent, and Raquel Armstead's still around. Well, I say he's back. Because I think he took a pit stop with Green Bay and is now back. So, I think the offense is going to be improved in certain ways this year. I think but they still have a ceiling because I think their wide receiver talent is their ceiling at receiver is not high. I think they got competent, but if DJ Chark was healthy last year, that would have helped Lawrence a ton. And I know that's one of the reasons they let Chark go, but they should have kept him because Chark has all the tools and has shown the ability to be a number one receiver for them. And I think they're going to miss him this year. Moving to defense, signed Roy Robertson-Harris. Really nice contract. I think that was a good move. Devon Hamilton, who they drafted in the third round in 2020, listed as their starting nose tackle. They've also brought in Folorunso Fatukasi, or Foley Fatukasi, as he's usually referred to. He was really good with the Jets, but he's dealt with injuries and inconsistency the last couple years. I like the contract Roy Robertson-Harris is on better than Fatukasi. Like $10 million a year for Fatukasi to me was a little steep, but if they get the higher end version of him, he's going to be really good for their run defense. And they're going to be running kind of an interesting kind of hybrid front type defense as well. So, moving to kind of the backups along the kind of beefier part of their defensive front. Dwayne Smoot's backing up Roy Robertson-Harris. J2 Afele, who was a fourth-round pick last year, is backing up Hamilton at nose. Adam Gotsis is backing up Fatukasi. They brought in Israel Antoine as an undrafted free agent. Azawa Afohai. That's a name. And Raekwon Williams kind of round out the interior line on the roster right now. And Arden Key. Arden Key's also here. So Key's more of an edge guy. Key, Smoot, Roy Robertson-Harris, they're edge players. Harris a little stronger in the run game. Arden Key's more of a pure pass rusher. Smoot's good. Moving to the linebacker group, you've got Josh Allen and Travon Walker listed as your starters there. Allen has coverage chops, which Walker has coverage chops too. But Allen's kind of like a hybrid player. That's why they've got a guy like Jameer Jones backing him up, and then undrafted free agent Deshaun Dixon. Behind Walker, you've got Kayvon Chasen and Rashad Berry, who are a little more, like, all three of those guys are a little more traditional edge guys, which Allen, like, has the edge measurables. It's just he played off-ball linebacker a lot as well at Kentucky. He has good coverage skills. Unlike Key and Smoot, who were defensive ends in college. So, their defense is going to be interesting and really multiple. Now, at linebacker, Devin Lloyd is listed as a starter here, but he's been out for most of camp. I think it was a hamstring injury. But he's going to play early and often. They think he'll be back for week 1. They're not sure, but they believe he'll start next to Foye Oluokun, who they signed to a big free agent contract, $15 million a year, to bring him in. Third round pick Chad Muma. I'm really excited for. I love that they double dipped in this linebackers class. Like Lloyd and Muma with Aluaku. That's a really fun, really high upside linebacker group. Because Lloyd and Muma, which Lloyd's 40 time at the combine was slower than expected. I think he's faster than that 40 time. He definitely plays faster than it. Muma ran in the low 4.6s. The rest of his combine numbers were high end at the linebacker position. And he's got a good head on him as well. I loved that. I really like the Jaguars draft class. Like, really, really, really like the Jaguars draft class. I'll say the home run swing with Walker at number one was interesting. It was interesting, but I get it. Also, off-ball linebacker, they've got Shaquille Quarterman, 4th round pick in 2020. I think him is like, your 4th best linebacker's not a bad place to be. And they have Tyrell Adams and Chappelle Russell behind those guys. Moving on to the secondary, you've got Tyson Campbell going into year 2. They're expecting a jump from him. Shaquille Griffin going into year 2 at corner after they brought him in from Seattle as a free agent. And they signed Darius Williams, who's listed as their starting slot guy. They signed him away from the Rams. He can play outside too. Williams is one of these undrafted corners, undrafted and late round picks that the Rams just keep developing into, quality starters. At least for them. Some of them don't translate outside of LA, but I think Darius Williams will. Behind them, Montart Brown, they drafted in the 7th round. I thought that was a fine pick. They've got Chris Claybrooks, who they spent a 27th round pick on. And Trey Herndon, who they've had on the roster since he was undrafted 2018. Solid rotational corner. He's the backup at the slot right now. He can play outside. I'd say he's kind of like there's a lot about him that's a lot like Darius Williams. He just hasn't been hit quite the same highs as Williams has. And then behind that, 6th round pick Gregory Jr. this year, undrafted free agent Benji Franklin. They have Xavier Crawford as well at corner. That's their cornerback depth. Campbell's got so much upside. And I really liked him last year. Which the corner class last year was. There was so many fun prospects in last year's corner class. There was this year too, but I really thought. I had Campbell rated ahead of Eric Stokes. I thought Eric Stokes was a reach in the 1st round, and he showed us all. Because everybody was talking about that with the Packers last year. Like, that's kind of a reach. And, yeah, he's got these tools. But, he seems kind of stiff. And da-da-da-da. And then he's just, maybe I should have been drafted higher than 28th overall. Or 29th, wherever he was drafted. Which Campbell was drafted at the top of the 2nd round. But, we shall see. Now, the safety position, I'm excited to see Andre Cisco playing center field for them. Because I was really high on Cisco last year. His ball skills at the safety position last year, and his range at the position was just ridiculous. Which he was coming off an ACL injury in 2020 going into last year, so he didn't play a ton last year. But the staff there seems really excited about what he's capable of. They've got Rayshawn Jenkins slated as the starting strong safety here. And I want to say, like, they kind of aggressively came out and signed him to a contract that kind of shocked everybody. It was a little more expensive than people expected for Jenkins. And I know my buddies who were Chargers fans were like, okay, bye. Like, they weren't, like, heartbroken. And especially when they saw the money, they were like, yeah, good luck with that. But he should be a fine starting safety. But I'd kind of put him like, I mentioned earlier, Eric Murray may be the worst starting safety in the draft. Well, I mean, not in the draft, but maybe the worst starting safety in the league or one of them. Jenkins is like just a step up from that. But I definitely trust him more. Behind him, you've got Andrew Wingard, undrafted free agent 2019. Mostly kind of a special teams guy to me. 5th round pick in 2020, Daniel Thomas. And then another undrafted guy from 2019, Brandon Rusnak. They have Rudy Ford that they brought in from Philly. And then they've got some, undrafted free agent Josh Thompson in this year's class. And Io Oeloa. I don't know what that designation SF20. I know the SF's that street free agent. I don't know what this EX I keep saying is. Is it like exempt, some kind of exemption, or anyway? I like Cisco, but I mean, there's a lot of young guys with promise on this team, but they're not there yet, or like they're still getting their footing. It's going to be a tough year. I think there's going to be a lot of ups and downs for the Jaguars this year. But I think they're going to take a big step forward this year. Special teams wise, Logan Cook still starting punter here. They've had a battle at kicker between James McCourt and Jake Verity, and it looks like our lads thinks McCourt is going to win. That's what I've been seeing is McCourt's going to be the starting kicker going into the season. Same long snapper Ross Matiskic. Man, some of these names. That one really stumped me there. He's going to year 3 with the team at long snapper. And then I mentioned Jamal Agnew earlier. He's their starting return guy. Kirk backing up at punt returner. That's not a shock, actually. He's shifty. He was a good punt returner in college. And Chris Claybrooks is the backup kick returner. Only guy they've got on injured reserve right now is Jordan Smith, who was a defensive end draft pick, I believe, last year out of UAB. Yeah. I was a fan of his 6'6", 255. Loved his size. He had pretty good testing numbers, especially for a guy with his size. Because he was going to factor into their defensive end position with Smoot and Robertson Harris and Key. I still have some hope for his development. All right. Finally, we're going to get to my Titans. So, for my Titans fans, here we are. We've made it. And spoilers, I said earlier, Titans are going to be the division champs. We're winning the division. Burks has looked really good in training camp. When he's played with Tannehill in training camp, he's looked awesome. And he has been consistently getting open during the preseason, and the ball just doesn't come his way. He's open. He's done his job. But, heaven forbid Willis or Woodside find him. That being said, I'm excited about Burks this year. Robert Woods, when he's healthy and ready to roll, I'm excited for him because he's been a really good starting receiver in the league. Very productive. works hard as a blocker. So does Burks. So does fellow rookie receiver Kyle Phillips, who I tell you, I love a lot of the draft picks for the top that we got this year. Getting Phillips in the 5th round, I thought was one of the steals of the draft, and he's going to start at slot, I think, over Nick Westbrook and Kenny. Phillips is really good, and he's looked great during training camp too. Like, no one can cover him. And I'll tell you what, Racing McMath is developing into something more than just a special teams guy. Like, McMath is actually developing into a bit of a deep threat, which he had the size and speed. I don't think he's going to turn into like some kind of star or anything, but he's turning into a role-playing receiver, which Des Fitzpatrick so far, nothing. I was kind of disappointed in that pick, getting him in the 4th round last year. There were better receivers on the board. But I still would rather him make the roster over Mason Kinsey. Kinsey has bricks for hands. Bricks that shatter for hands. I'd rather see Reggie Roberson, who's not done a whole lot, make the roster, or Cody Hollister at this point. He just ain't it. Kinsey ain't it. Kinsey, he's dropped so many passes that he's basically going to force the Titans to keep Des Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick should send one of his game checks this year to Kinsey for giving him a spot on the team. But I like our top 4 of Woods, Burks, Westbrook and Kenny, and Phillips. By the way, in future shows, if I mention Nick Westbrook and Kenny, I'm probably going to call him NWI. So, but I love him as a 4th receiver. And I think Kyle Phillips is a more athletic, has the potential to be a more athletic Hunter Renfrow. So that's going to be fun. And he blocks. All 4 of the guys I named, and McMath too, all 5 of those guys, they block well and give effort, which helps your run game and screen game. So that's going to be fun. Offensive line, Taylor Wan, not concerned. Ben Jones, not concerned. Nate Davis, not concerned. Aaron Brewer, going into the season, potentially as our starting left guard, has me concerned. Very concerned. Now, I like the fact that Radins has... Because, I'll say this, Nicholas Petit-Frere has looked better in preseason and training camp than I was anticipating. But Radins has seemingly locked down the starting right tackle spot. That's a good sign. Whenever Petit-Frere is ready, Radins can slide into that guard spot, but I don't love seeing Brewer out there, and Radins still has to prove come regular season that he can start out, or that he's ready to start at right tackle. Like I said, I'm actually pleasantly surprised with Nicholas Petit-Frere. I was not super elated at that pick at the time because there were other tackles on the board that I liked much better. But you know what? I think it's just like always, it's possible I was wrong. At the other tackle spot, weirdly, Christian DeLauro, who I'm not super familiar with, is listed as our backup left tackle. I've seen him play this offseason, this training camp, but I don't know. Not really. Nicholas Petit-Frere is our swing tackle right now. Jamarco Jones also has played some tackle and screen, but he's mostly a guard. He's backing up. You've got Corey Levin, who's been on the team as a backup center for years now. Jordan Roos is listed as our backup right guard. And we tend to not spend a ton of capital on like our backup offensive linemen. We just pick guys up and we develop them, which is, it's a thing. But we've got a bunch of people fighting for roster spots. A lot of undrafted guys: Jalen McKenzie, Xavier Newman, Hayden Howerton, Willis Wright is here, and also undrafted free agent Andrew Rupchik. Offensive line is definitely the question mark going into this year. Like we came in knowing like left guard and right tackle are going to be like, there's no sure things, or it's not a sure thing right now. But despite all the injuries and everything we had last year, we were the number 1 seed in the AFC. So if we're healthier than, which just about guaranteed will be healthier than last year, if we could do what we did last year, we should be able to win the division again with the roster we have this year. At tight end, we're better at tight end. Signed Austin Hooper. Jeff Swaim is back. We drafted Chigakonkwo. Chigakonkwo is my dude. He's looked great since mini camps. He's looked really great in training camp, especially working with Ryan Tannehill. He's going to play a lot of move tight end for us. He's going to play a lot of snaps, and he's got Johnny Smith, Delaney Walker potential. He's going to be fun. We also brought in Tommy Hudson. Tommy Hudson's been around the roster, like on the practice squad since 2020, but we've got him. We have David Wells, and we also have Thomas Odukoya. I'm going to say Hudson makes the roster, at least is around the team. And I wouldn't count out Chig playing a decent amount, or like seeing some snaps at fullback. So at quarterback, Tannehill's back. I think he's going to have a bounce back year because we're going to be healthier at receiver. Logan Woodside is still listed as the backup, but I hope by the start of the season that's not the case. Malik Willis has actually looked kind of encouraging. And he's looked better than Woodside in preseason, so. But I don't understand how Woodside's still on our roster. He's been on our roster for way too long. This guy can't. I don't know what he does other than hold a clipboard well. And I'm assuming he holds a clipboard well, because he does nothing else anytime I've seen him do anything involving being a quarterback. So, moving on to running back, Derrick Henry, back healthy. I'm not worried about injury problems. Dontrell Hilliard is not the number 2 back here. Because Hassan Haskins and Trenton Cannon have proven they are better players. Now, Hilliard maybe is the best third down player on the roster, but in terms of actually playing like the position, Haskins is really our backup for Henry. And Cannon's looked really good in preseason. And I'm even liked what I've seen out of Julius Chestnut in training camp. And then we've got Troy Carter, who we picked up undrafted last year out of LSU. Really good fullback. When I say Chig might play some at fullback, that's not a diss on Carter, and doesn't mean that Carter's expendable. I just think Chig can do so many things and be a weapon used in so many ways. Moving to defensive line, well, to the defensive side of the ball. On the defensive line, Danico Autry is back. Had a heck of a season last year. Super productive. 9 or 9.5 sacks. Jeffrey Simmons also playing the other kind of attacking interior line spot. Simmons, I'd argue already is the heir to Aaron Donald's throne as the best interior lineman in the league. And he was he's been a world record in big games. He had 3 sacks in the Bengals game in the playoffs. Simmons is ridiculous. And then Taseer Tart is still starting at nose tackle for us. We do a really good job of just finding undrafted guys and just slotting them into the run stuffer role. Behind him, we've got Naquan Jones, who was undrafted last year. Backing up Autry and Simmons, we brought in DeMarcus Walker. I like that move behind Autry. We have Kevin Strong, who we brought in last year, who's behind Simmons right now. We picked up Sam Okueyinonu. Sam Okueyinonu. Man, that's a mouthful. As an undrafted free agent, Deshaun Hand. We brought him in. I love that as an upside move on the interior. And Laurel Murrickson is still here, who's a 5th rounder in 2020. I'm excited about that. And then we also have Jaden Peavy, who we picked up as an undrafted free agent. Haskell Garrett actually got cut. He was a guy some people thought was going to be like a 3rd, 4th round pick. Went undrafted. Titans picked him up. He's gone. But Peavy's here, which that's not a shock. And it wouldn't shock me by the end of the year. Peavy is actually our starting nose tackle. Because he was really good at A&M. I couldn't believe he went undrafted. Moving to the edge. Hopefully Bud Dupree is healthy for the whole season. And at least close to his best that he's shown in his career so far. We just re-signed Harold Landry to a big contract coming off of his best season in the league. We have a good edge tandem. And I'll say Ola Odeniyi has been awesome in preseason. He's looked really good. That was a really good pickup going into last season. I think he's got tons of potential. Rashad Weaver should play a bigger role this year. Hopefully he's got his personal life together. We drafted him 4th round last year, which I thought he was a high upside player in that he was highly productive at Pitt, and there were certain film study and testing numbers that made me believe he was going to be a guy who outperformed his draft stock or had a really good chance of doing so. Him being in a rotational role for us is really good, I think. And then we also have David Anini. David Anini, who's an undrafted free agent. I wish we had a little more I wish our depth was a little better at edge, though. I wish we had another guy that I liked. But whatever. Moving to the inside, we're kind of rebuilding at linebacker. It started last year, we were able to get Zach Cunningham on waivers from Houston. That was really nice with Evans and Brown's contracts up. David Long has been really good for us after we drafted in the 6th round in 2019. Love seeing him as a starter. I have no idea when Monty Rice is going to be physically able to perform, but when he is, he'll also factor in at linebacker in a big way. But he's on the PUP list right now. Chance Campbell has looked really fun. He's definitely going to be great as a gunner on special teams. He and Dylan Cole as a special teams duo is actually kind of scary to think about because those guys are almost just feel like they're almost a little too fast for their size, and there's a little bit of recklessness to them. But both those guys have like some really fun because Cole was undrafted last year. He and Campbell have like some awesome traits and the work ethic to where I'm really excited to see what they are down the road or what they might turn into down the road. And then we also have Jack Gibbons, who's undrafted this year, and Joe Jones, who was on the roster last year at interior linebacker. But I can't wait for Monty Rice to be back because Rice looked really good when he played last year. Moving to the secondary is going to be fun. We were so injured in the secondary, especially at corner last year. It was ridiculous. But Farley's healthy, and he's been kind of up and down, but he's looked way more comfortable the longer preseason and training camp is going on. You know, Christian Fulton, solid. Not worried there. Elijah Molden, he looked really good as a rookie too, playing in the slot. Behind him, we've got Roger McCreary, who will get a lot of chances in the slot as well. But he's looked good outside too. He's a little undersized, but McCreary's technique is just, it's great. I probably shouldn't be as worried about him as I am, but you know me, I like long, fast corners. I like long, tall, twitched up corners. McCreary's not that. That doesn't mean he's not good. We also have Greg Mabin, and Chris Jackson is still somehow on this roster despite the fact that he spends all day, every day getting absolutely roasted in coverage by ball carriers. It doesn't matter. Chris Jackson will find a way. It could be your grandma with the ball. He'll find a way to get totally burned. Couldn't decide between burned and roasted. Almost said bonested. Really weird. And also Trey Swilling, who's undrafted. Trey Avery. Apparently we like Treys at corner. We picked up Lonnie Johnson, former Kentucky corner. Big, fast, long corner. He's dealt with some injury issues. We'll see if he makes the roster and factors in that position. I wouldn't mind seeing him on the roster. But I like how we have all these guys like Farley, McCreary, Molden, Fulton. You know, day one, day two guys we've drafted in the last, couple seasons. 2-3 drafts. I mean, you just can't have too many corners in the modern NFL. Moving to safety, Kevin Beard and Amani Hooker. There's an argument that they actually are the best safety tandem in the league. If you look at Amani Hooker's grade or PFF grade from last year, I was a huge fan of that draft pick. Loved that draft pick. He's turned into a really, really good safety. And Hooker can play some of the slot as well. Theo Jackson, 6th round pick already, second string safety, and he's also run some in the slot in training camp in preseason. We brought in AJ Moore as a backup. We have Adrian Colbert. We traded for Tyreek Gillespie from Vegas. I love that move because I was a huge Tyreek Gillespie fan last year. And we also have Joshua Kalu and Ugo Amadi factoring in as safety depth. I really want to see Tyreek Gillespie get some snaps this year for us. At punter, Brett Kern's here, but we did pick up Ryan Stonehouse, undrafted. Now, I had Matt Araiza as my number one punter all the way up to the draft. My mind has been swayed on Ryan Stonehouse. Stonehouse, by the way, he and Araiza had played their entire careers in the same conference, head to head. Stonehouse at Colorado State, Araiza at San Diego State. Stonehouse, before this season, outpunted him every year. And his leg strength, pretty much equal. He just has better control of it. He's a better placement punter, but he has the ability to do the exact same stuff Araiza does. And he's been doing it longer and more consistently. So I actually think we ended up with the best punter, and there were like 3 or 4 punters drafted, and we got him undrafted. I hope we can keep a hold of him, and he can be the replacement for Brett Kern eventually. And Randy Bullock's back for a second year at kicker. At long snapper, it's like we're on to a new long snapper, but it is Morgan Cox, who was the long-time long snapper for Baltimore. Cox has been in the league for a long time, former University of Tennessee long snapper. One of the most consistent players at that position over the last, decade or so. Like, that was a really nice get. And we're bringing a Vol. We're bringing a Tennessee boy back to Tennessee. I like it. Kyle Phillips right now is listed as our top punt returner, which I like. Dontrell Hilliard being our number one kick returner. I'd rather see Cannon or Phillips in that role, but whatever. Kinsey's listed as the backup punt returner. He's not going to make the team. God, I hope he doesn't make the team. And then there's Reggie Roberson also backing up there. And right now, lucky for us, we only have a couple guys on the PUP list, and one of them is Caleb Shudik, who was, we brought him in to give him a look at place kicker. So we're actually relatively super healthy right now, which borderline terrifies me. I'd rather our health look more like this at the end of the season. You don't want people injured anytime, but it's like, I'm worried. It's like they're just going to be a deluge the back half of the season again. But this is the team that's going to win this division. I'm confident in it. We've got the best coaching staff in the division. Vrabel is just, there are coaching staffs that just get more out of their rosters than other people would be able to get, and Vrabel's one of those guys. He's able to get a level of competence and execution from his teams and from fringe guys that most people just cannot manage. So, with that being said, we're going to get into some late stuff here. I'm going to try and be quick here, so I'm just going to do the Araiza story. So, Matt Araiza, who I just recently mentioned, drafted by the Buffalo Bills. It has just come out that he is getting he's got a civil lawsuit on his hands. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go to ESPN. I'm going to go to NFL Home. Yeah, here we are. So we're going to read this off at ESPN real quick. So let me pull that back up. So, sources: Matt Araiza won't punt for Buffalo Bills in preseason finale versus Carolina Panthers. Buffalo Bills rookie punter Matt Araiza who was accused in a lawsuit Thursday for gang. I really don't want to say that word on YouTube. Gang bleeping a 17-year-old girl when he was at San Diego State last year will not dress for Friday's preseason finale against Carolina Panthers. The team's kicker Tyler Bass and long snapper Reed Ferguson ran out onto the field minutes prior to the announcement. I guess this just happened. So this was just updated, this part of the story. Although he did travel to Charlotte. Okay. Araiza is the only punter on the team's roster after the Bills named him the starter with the release of punter Matt Hack on Monday, which he was then subsequently, Hack was picked up by the Colts because Sanchez is injured. Bass and backup quarterback Matt Barkley were seen practicing punts before Friday's game. Matt Barkley, former USC quarterback, safety Micah Hyde, and backup quarterback Case Keenum were both warming up as the backup holder. Interesting. The lawsuit filed. So here's the lawsuit filed in San Diego County Superior Court and obtained by ESPN accuses Araiza and two of his former San Diego State teammates of bleep gender violence and false imprisonment. I mean, these are heavy accusations. Here's the thing, though. This is a civil suit. This is not a criminal lawsuit. This is not a criminal proceeding. No criminal complaint has been filed. It's been, if it hasn't been a year, it's been nearly a year since this incident occurred. No criminal complaint. No investigation started. Well, I think the university has now started an investigation. But the investigation was started like 7, 8 months, whatever, after whatever happened. And this has just kind of hit everybody. I mean, this literally just hit everybody yesterday. According to the lawyer, Araiza, who was 21 at the time, had sex with the then high school senior who was under the age of consent in California. Outside at an off-campus party held at his residence in the early hours of October 17, 2021. The suit states that Araiza brought her inside a room where at least 3 other men were located. Were, not where, ESPN. Come on, editing. Including 2 other men named in the suit. Xavier Leonard, who is a redshirt freshman, and Nolan Iwaliko, who was a freshman last season but is no longer on the listed roster. Araiza's criminal attorney, Kerry Armstrong, told ESPN that Araiza did not tell the Bills about the allegations until early June. Okay, so these allegations have been going for a while, but told the Bills in June when the Los Angeles Times reported the allegations. See, I didn't even see this. Well, against 5 Aztec football players, had not been investigated by San Diego State. So this was in early June. The Los Angeles Times reported this. I didn't see this report. So, well, you know. but had not been investigated by San Diego State. The university, um, the university said this was based on the San Diego Police Department's request that the school not take any action in order to not interfere with a police investigation into the incident, which is interesting. So the police were, because from what I was seeing, and well, what I had read and seen yesterday, there had not been a criminal complaint filed. So, the Bills released a statement Thursday night stating that they were recently made aware of a civil complaint involving Matt from October 2021 due to the serious natures of Here's my thing. If the allegations are true, string the guy up. I mean, like, he'd deserve it. But in the wake of the stuff going on with Watson, I mean, I do have questions like, why are you filing a civil lawsuit? Because from everything I've read so far, like from the stuff I've seen so far and listened to so far, there has not been a criminal complaint filed against Matt Araiza. So I find it really interesting that all these cases seem to be just going straight to civil courts. Well, I say straight. We wait 6, 7, 8 months, over a year, and then file a civil suit against somebody. And the reason that's done, and I'll say the reason that's done is civil cases, you don't have to clear near as high a bar to get a judgment in your favor. Oh, he won't go to prison, but I can get something out of him and potentially ruin his life. Which, here's the thing, if he's guilty, he deserves to have his life ruined. And I have a lot of other questions, but I don't want to go into it. I mean, it's a crap story. You know, you hate to even have to talk about this stuff. But it's in the news. And this is a player that I've, kind of got some fame last year. And the allegations here is maybe he got a feeling that he was untouchable. But but there's a lot of different stuff with this story because there's other people implicated in this. And then you have the added thing like a 17-year-old high school senior at a college party. Now, trust me, that's not unheard of. But if you're not vetting the people who you're running around with and not being vigilant about that kind of stuff, you're going to open yourself up to some stupid stuff. Because here's the thing. Maybe these allegations are more severe than what happened. But at the very least, bro, you better hope. I don't even want to say it. This is another thing, though. I tell people, this is why partying is a bad idea. Like, drinking and partying is a bad idea. At the very least, especially when it's at your place, having a bunch of people over, and and letting yourself or other people get out of hand, go to a club. Go out in public. That way at least there are people like who maybe will stop you from doing something ridiculously stupid. You still might get caught doing something stupid, but man. Like I said, if he did it, he deserves whatever comes his way. But we definitely need to see more facts come out. We don't need to rush to judgment in any direction. So, with that being said, that's the show for today. I plan to do things a little differently and not end on such a downer, but I wanted to get the preview out of the way, and I wanted to talk about that story, and things have been kind of crazy today. So, with that being said, this has been, for the final time today, BlindEyeLive, and I will catch y'all Monday, unless I decide to just randomly stream tomorrow with no plan. Because Monday I'm starting with the NFC East. With the NFC, and I'm starting